What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today I want to talk about some of the biggest winners and losers, essentially stock up, stock down, after week one of the New York Jets preseason. So the Jets won 30-10 yesterday in their first preseason action, and I think in a win like that, there's going to be more good than bad, but I wanted to talk about things or players or even coaches come on this list of guys whose stock is rising and guys whose stock is maybe going down after this most recent performance. So we'll start on the positive side with the winners. And the first winners, I'm going to group a bunch of people together and just say the coaching staff. I was okay with how the coaching staff performed yesterday, and we'll put a pin on the one critique, but just give me a second. Tanner Engstrand, I thought his offense looked really solid. I said it in the post-game video last night. It wasn't really anything earth-shattering. The Jets weren't running a bunch of trick plays. They weren't doing these crazy, intense concepts. They kept it easy for their quarterback. You know, first read, ball out. They ran the ball really well. And I came away, again, just impressed. There was a lot of motion. They used the tight ends. They used the fullback. Engstrand, I thought, passed his first test. And again, granted, it's a preseason game, but I still thought he played well or coached well. Aaron Glenn, the one critique from Aaron Glenn, or just the Jets in general yesterday, was the amount of penalties. But he handled the amount of penalties a little bit different than Robert Saleh, a lot a bit different than Robert Saleh. Glenn was pulling guys off the field. Michael Clemens, dumb penalty, pulls him off the field, sits him down for a play. He gets in the face of McCreary Ball and is ripping into him, because that can't happen. On that drive where there was the back-to-back late hit out of bounds, the Packers got points. And again, it's a preseason game. Like the score of these games don't really matter. It's more about the evaluation. But in game, in the regular season, you can't have penalties like that. The Jets are not a team that could afford to just give away free yardage, because they're going to lose games that way. They're not a team that, is expected to go 13-4 and, oh, you gave up a couple yards. Well, you have the best quarterback in the NFL who's going to go down the field and score. No, the offense and points are going to be hard to come by. They're going to have to grind out games. That's the style that Glenn has talked about, physical, aggressive, tempo, energy, all those, buzzwords that he throws around kind of leads you to think they're going to be a hard-nosed, grinded-out football team. And in order to do that successfully, you can't have those mental mistakes. And we'll see. Hopefully they progress. That's one of the things that I'll be watching for next week against the Giants. Penalty numbers got to come down, but I think he handled it well. Also in this Jets coaching staff, Jets new O-line coach Steve Hyden, I thought his unit stood out as a positive, especially the starting unit. Really, really good. Opening a ton of lanes in the run game. And even when they were down to their third string, the Stone Smart touchdown play, the backup offensive linemen are getting out in space and making plays. I love it. Another winner has to be Jay Tufele. Just an unreal performance yesterday. 1.5 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, a fumble recovery for a touchdown, running around playing like prime Aaron Donald in this game. The Jets coaching staff talked him up a ton this summer, and I think he has a really good chance to make this roster just because interior defensive line feels pretty wide open, but he made a statement. And you know what? Credit to him, because on the first play of the game, he got called for an encroachment penalty, a little too over-aggressive. And we've seen it from the Jets before where a player, makes a mistake and then it just drives them, they go way off the rails and it completely derails their game. He bounced back and was one of their best defensive players the entire night. So shout out to Tufele. We're going to continue to see a lot of him in the preseason. As I mentioned, he's gotten talked about a ton by Steve Wilks, and we kind of saw why in this game. I also have Andrew Beck as a winner, 2 catches, 36 yards on the first drive. He's making the team. I feel pretty good about that prediction that I made a few weeks ago. I thought Andrew Beck was kind of the guy that maybe not a ton of people are talking about him and people know who he is, but to the extent that he was a lock to make the roster, I feel that way now. I feel vindicated to have that opinion. He was used a lot and he was really good. 1, catching the ball, and number 2, as a blocker. Can line him up as a tight end. He's done that before in the NFL. and is a prototypical fullback, and more on someone else who plays a similar role in a little bit. But Beck stood out as a major positive, and something else that I think we have to remember, this was the Jets' essentially first, outside of Jamie and Sherwood, right, who they retained, but first external free agent addition. Not that it was a huge name, but the Jets clearly, like, they want to establish being a run-heavy football team, and you got to have guys who could do that. I think Beck has a good chance to essentially be this team's fullback / tight end too. I also have Braylon Allen as a winner. 8 carries, 33 yards, 4.1 yards per attempt, which doesn't really like jump off the page, but eye test wise, I thought he looked by far the best of the big 3 running backs, with Braylon Allen, Breece Hall, and Isaiah Davis. There was a couple short yardage situations that he was able to convert. He didn't convert or wasn't able to on 4th and 1, but looked explosive, had a couple nice big runs, which added to his total. And I think the Jets are going to really go through and use a lot of their backs this year. It's not going to just be, hey, Breece is going to run the ball 25 times a game and Braylon Allen maybe gets your RB2, whoever it is, gets like 2 carries. No, they're going to split. They're going to ride the hot hand, and I'm totally fine with that. Another running back we have to shout out, Donovan Edwards. Really good. 9 carries, 42 yards, 4.7 yards per attempt. What stinks, he had a 70-plus yard touchdown run called back on a hold. A little ticky-tacky, but it was ruled a hold, so they brought it back. He also did have a catch for 21 yards and picked up a first down. The Jets were penalized on the play before, so I believe it was either 1st and 20 or 2nd and 20, and was able to convert on a catch and run there. And imagine if he had those additional 70 yards on top, he would have had 102 rushing yards, 112 rushing yards, whatever it is. Would have been a really, really nice day for him. All right, to the losers or stock down guys, I have a few. More positive than negatives from this game by far, but I have to mention Jeremy Ruckert as a stock down. Did he play in this game? Wasn't really all that noticeable out there, no targets. And you look around and all the other tight ends made plays in this game. I talked about Beck. Looked really good in the run game, caught a couple passes for big plays. Couple conversions too. Stone Smart had a touchdown, takes a check down, blockers get out in front of him, uses athleticism, gets in the end zone. Hell, even Zach Kuntz had a 12-yard reception, first down conversion in this game. It was a quiet day for Jeremy, and I don't think he can afford to have days like this when there's major question marks at the tight end spot outside the top guy. Mason Taylor's not playing right now with a high ankle sprain. But beyond that, it's wide open. There's not a ton there. And like I said, Smart made plays. Beck was making plays. Kuntz had a catch. It was a quiet day for Jeremy Ruckert. I also have Dean Clark as a stock down. I thought he's a long shot to make this team regardless, but had a low light standout, got ran over on the long touchdown run that the Packers had. But a play like that isn't going to get you recognized or make you stand out in a positive way. And again, maybe that's a little harsh, right? Like it was one play and, I'm highlighting it, but he didn't really do anything else to stand out in a positive. Like for instance, if it was somebody else who maybe made a couple big plays earlier in the game, like Quantez Stiggers, for example, on specials, maybe you are a little bit more willing to forgive because there were some other standout highlights. Unfortunately for Dean, that wasn't really the case. And the last one's Michael Clemens. So this was funny to me. Aaron Glenn earlier in camp was talking about Michael Clemens as a player, and they really like him. And Steve Wilkes likes him too. They've talked positively about him. And with Jermaine Johnson out right now, he's essentially running with the ones and is going to be edge 3 on this team when Jermaine Johnson comes back. So he's going to have a big role. But essentially what they were saying was, the discipline, he's got to get that under control. Penalties aren't really great. And on the second possession, first play on the second possession, he's already fighting somebody. And he has history with this. It happens a lot with Michael Clemens. It seems like it usually against Buffalo, these things happen, but there was even other times. But moral of the story, Aaron Glenn was like, yeah, we gotta get that under control. And essentially the first chance he has, he's fighting and getting flagged for a personal foul call. Now, it was both sides ended up getting flagged, but Aaron Glenn said that he's got to address it. That was one of the things. And he addressed it with McCreary Ball. Eric Watts, I believe he talked to as well. guys who were getting personal foul calls. He was bringing them over and giving it to him a little bit. So those are my stock up and stock down, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe here if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.